Good morning. The Hearing Board of the South Coast Air Quality Management District is in session. Today is Tuesday, September 10th, 2019, and the time is 9:00 a.m. We are meeting in the Hearing Board room in Diamond Bar. We have one matter on the calendar for today, and that is the County of San Bernardino Regional Park, case number 6152-1 for an interim. And I'm going to stop before I introduce the parties in the matter because we have, well, he's not exactly a new member, but we have a newly reappointed member of an alternate for the hearing board who will be sitting in today, Mr. Robert Copeland, who needs to be sworn in.
Thank you. Good morning. Mr. Copeland, if I can ask you to raise your right hand. You can stand.
Should I stand?
We don't have a photographer in here today, but be issuing your oath for your term, which runs through June 30th, 2022. If you'll repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Robert Copeland.
During such times as I hold the above office.
During such times as I hold the above office.
Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance.
To the Constitution of the United States.
To the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of which I am about to enter.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And by the above office, you mean hearing board at the... And we are, I should point out that we are also a 4-member board for today. One of our members is ill as well. Okay, so calling that first case, County of San Bernardino Regional Park. Who is representing the County of San Bernardino Special Districts today? I'm sorry. Who is representing regional park, or is there two parties that are filing today?
No, so it's just going to be one. So it's going to be under the County of San Bernardino. I'm going to be representing the County of San Bernardino. My name is Lauren Finwall, L-A-U-R-E-N, Finwall, F-I-N-W-A-L-L. And then I brought with me experts on the matter. So there's multiple departments from the County of San Bernardino. So there's fleet management, regional parks, and special districts.
Thank you, Ms. Finwall. And who is representing the executive officer this morning?
Brian Tomasovic, Senior Deputy District Counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Tomasovic. Okay, first of all, we've received several documents. We received a 2-page document, which begins, it's 2 pages, and it begins with the Prado Regional Park variance request, and we're going to mark that as exhibit number 1 for petitioner. We've also received an IC engine operating log. That's a 1-page document, and we're going to mark that as exhibit number 2 for petitioner. We've received a 1-page document on the left-hand corner, states AQMD excess emission factors, and we're going to mark that as exhibit 3. We also received a two-page document with the top document is an email from Lauren Finwall. No, sorry, to Lauren Finwall from Jeff Lover. And we're going to, and that is dated September 7, 2019. We're going to mark that as exhibit number 4. And finally, we have one more one-page email from Ryan Isorn, sent September 7, 2019, and that's also to Lauren Finwall, and we're going to mark that as exhibit number 5. We are hearing today an interim variance request, and so with all interim variances, we are going to bifurcate the hearing, and we're going to begin with an opening statement from both parties and any evidence and witnesses with regard to good cause. And Ms. Finwall, you've been before us a number of times, I believe, and do you need any reminder of what the elements are for good cause?
I do not believe so.
Okay, so the hearing board will hear with regard, evidence and testimony with regard to whether there is good cause to proceed in absence of notice to the public today, and if we deliberate and rule that there is, we will then move on to the 6 findings for an interim variance. And with that, Ms. Finwall, if you'd like to begin with an opening on good cause. Thank you.
Thank you very much. To start off, we're just going to go over a quick timeline for what happened. So to start, this emergency generator, starting the top of this year, Wednesday, February 13th, the Prado Regional Park lost commercial power due to transformer repairs that were being done by the County of San Bernardino, which put the emergency generator at 148 emergency hours. Starting in August, there was a 10.1 emergency hour outage that caused those hours to go to 168.4. On Tuesday, August 27th, the generator lost power at approximately 3:30 p.m. Thursday, August 29th, Prado staff called fleet to maintain and add fuel to the emergency generator, at which fleet management was then made aware that the generator had gone over 200 emergency hours. On Friday, August 30th, the County of San Bernardino Fleet Management filed a petition for variance with South Coast AQMD. Tuesday, September 3rd, the county kind of got a little bit more clarifying information stating that on August 14th, the maintenance hours were at 168.4, and that we did not want to come and apply for a variance till we had hit 180 hours, and that the 200 hours were hit late Thursday evening, so that's why we applied for it early on Friday. Prado Regional Park on Tuesday the 3rd was also in discussion with Cisco, who is the contractor, to see how long it would take to get power returned to the site. What happened was a rodent had chewed through a piece of wire, and it had affected 650 feet of that wire. So repairs were supposed to be made starting the week of September 9th. On Saturday, September 7th, Prado Regional Park regained power at 1:30, and the total emergency hours for 2019 were at 430 hours, or 430.31 hours, and repairs to the main line still need to be made. And as of this morning, the total hours are 431.31, with that 1 hour being accounted for maintenance. On to good cause. So the current hours on the emergency generator are at 431.3 hours, 31 hours for the 2019 year. Repairs are currently being made to underground wiring at the County of San Bernardino Prado Regional Park. The County of San Bernardino Fleet Management has done their due diligence by applying for the variance as soon as the issue of being at 200 emergency hours was brought to our attention. Fleet Management will be helping the Special Districts and Regional Parks Department through this hearing board process. Circumstances for this variance is due to the fact that a piece of 650 feet underground wiring had been destroyed by a rodent, which in turn affected the entire piece of that wiring. This is beyond reasonable control for the County of San Bernardino. The benefit to keeping the emergency generator far outweighs shutting the emergency generator down due to air contaminants. The emergency generator is hooked to a sewer lift that keeps the sewage line running with no backups. By taking the emergency generator offline, the County of San Bernardino runs the risk of creating a biohazard for the community of Prado Regional Park and the community surrounding the park. This emergency generator will only run during an emergency when power supply is cut or for 1 hour a month during maintenance. With these efforts, the County of San Bernardino Fleet Management, special districts, and regional parks will only run this emergency generator for these reasons to reduce the emissions as much as possible. If the petition for variance were not to be granted, the community of Prado Regional Park and around the park run the risk of biohazardous waste spreading throughout the regional park and creating an environmental justice issue. This is a health risk for the community. By the end of 2020, the transformer repairs happening within Prado Regional Park should be complete, and issues like this would not resurface for the foreseeable future. The County of San Bernardino Regional Parks will research options for better pest control, and the County of San Bernardino will then report back on the findings of this research on the proposed due date set by the South Coast AQMD Hearing Board. A GPS unit has also been installed onto the emergency generator on Friday, September 6th, so that the generator can be monitored in real time. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Finwall. Mr. Tomasovic, your opening on good cause.
Madam Chair, members of the board, good morning. For the district, if the board should find good cause, we have some proposed interim variance conditions, which I would say are generic and basic and appropriate to, as the evidence will establish, a generator of 96 brake horsepower and a relatively newer engine, I believe around 2012 manufacturing year. Two members of our compliance staff have been able to visit the site, so we're not expecting any contentiousness over the basic facts presented, either on good cause or on the merits, and we, as you, will be receptive to their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Finwall, we've received what we marked as exhibit number 1, which is a discussion of good cause and other facts. Will you have a witness going over these, or should we take a moment to read them ourselves?
I think if you wanted to take a moment to read it over yourselves,
Okay.
but I think it's just a summary of everything I just said.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why don't we, I think it would be good if we all take about 5 minutes to read exhibit number 1, so that when you present witnesses, we'll be ready.
Okay.
Okay, we're off the record. We're back on the record. Okay, Ms. Finwall, you may present your first witness.
So I think, so I'm going to go as the first witness, just to kind of go over this.
Oh, okay.
If there's any,
Were you sworn in? I'm sorry.
I don't think any of us were
Oh,
sworn in,
I-
actually. No, it's okay.
So many things we had to do this morning, I totally
It's a-
forgot to swear in witnesses.
Totally fine.
Anyone who wishes to testify in today's proceeding, including any members of the public who may be present, please rise to be sworn in. Please raise your right hand. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Okay. Sorry, Ms. Finwall, and everything that, we can take your opening then as evidence, so everything you said was under oath, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And if you wouldn't mind, Exhibit 3, I didn't have an understanding of what the RHC was, but I was updated that that was considered a VOC. And if you would like, I updated the pricing numbers, if you would like that information now.
Why don't we wait on that, because excess emissions will only be a factor should we go to the merits of the matter.
Okay.
Okay. So sticking with good cause, do you have anything else you wish to elaborate on or anything you wish to add?
Not at this time.
Okay. Mr. Tomasovic, do you have any questions for Ms. Finwall?
I do not.
I had a couple of questions. Okay, I'm looking at exhibit number 1, and also based, I know, on your recitation of these facts. I know you, well, actually, it was based on what you said this morning. You said you did not want to ask for a variance till you reached 180 hours. So back on August 14th, when you were at 168.4 hours, you did not ask for a variance then. Was that based, I know I read in the petition, I believe, was that based on historical usage of the generator?
Not on this particular generator, but with other hearings in the past.
Okay. And based on the fact that you believed, did you believe that you would make it through the rest of the year at that with 168.4 hours?
We did,
Okay, including maintenance?
yes.
Okay. On the August 27th, when the power was lost originally, well, lost this last time, did anyone from the county know that, or it was just, can you remind us so we understand how it works? Who runs the generator and who is watching the generator?
Yes. So the generator is owned by the County of San Bernardino Special Districts, but it is operated by the regional parks since it is located at the Prado Regional Park. So to my knowledge, these two departments were unaware of the South Coast AQMD operating hour limits due to the fact that fleet management is who maintains and make sure that the generator is staying within those hours. On August 14th, I believe we tried to inform them to let us know if it was running, but due to the kind of nature of what was occurring, I think there were a few other issues, the transformer issue, so that was not an expected issue to have, of having that rodent true on that wire. And once they kind of went deeper into the issue, they saw that that wire had affected other pieces of the wire. So when they went to go turn it back on after repairs, it had made the problem worse, which then continued the problem, which got us into the 200 hours. So that, I think was a little over a week and a half is how long that process took from when the wire initially went out to when it was officially fixed.
Okay, so there are
That answer.
three departments that are involved?
Yes.
Okay. Special Districts owns it. Fleet management makes sure that it is
Maintains it.
maintained and within the permit limits
Yes.
of usage, but it's operated by regional parks.
Correct. So,
And all of these are under the county.
correct.
Okay. My question is, who made the decision on the 14th that the county wanted to wait until the 180 hours had been reached. Who made that decision? You made that decision.
Yeah, fleet
Represent-
management.
I'm sorry, Fleet management made that decision. So fleet management made that decision, knew that the generator was pretty high up for this time of year, but was not watching the hours. I'm trying to understand
So
who was tracking it, knowing that, that you were waiting for that 180 hours.
So I'm actually going to defer that question to one of our witnesses, if you don't mind.
Okay, and so do you want to wait, we'll ask questions of you, and you'll introduce that witness after?
Yes.
Okay. Just making notes to remember. And one other thing I just wasn't clear on, the rodent chewing through the wires, that occurred, so that last outage that occurred on the 27th of August, that same outage went through September 7th.
Correct.
Okay. So did anyone, I know that it's special districts and fleet management didn't know, did regional parks have any idea that the generator had gone over the 200 hours, or is that also deferred?
I'm also going to defer that question.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else have questions? Mr. Balagopalan?
Yes, Ms. Fenwal. I had a question. I'm looking at exhibit number 2 and looking at the power outage and the log. I've noticed that there's very little maintenance that is done. It's not a monthly maintenance at this site.
I'm
Is
going to
there-
defer
you'll
that
defer that?
question.
Oh, okay. And, okay, so I wanted to also then find out what, on January 23rd, what caused that power outage? Should they defer to the other? But, okay, thank you.
Anyone else have questions? Mr. Copeland?
Thank you. So the highlighted bullet on Exhibit 1, I wanted to verify, when it says the outage, the County of San Bernardino was officially able to look at the logbook on Tuesday, 9/3. The outage hours for the emergency generator were at 158.3. And it says the August maintenance put that total to 168.4. And I just wanted to, you're not saying that there was a mistake in the log?
No, so to maybe better clarify the situation, so I run the environmental compliance for fleet management and also for the county. So Thursday, about around 4:30, I was made aware. So on Friday that morning, I had taken the time to fully, with the information I had and just knowing that we had gone over that 200-hour limit, I just created the variance so that way I could have it turned in by Friday, and I got it turned in that afternoon. So then after the Labor Day weekend had occurred, we had come back, so we were kind of I was able to kind of go out with the technicians and make sure and check everything, what was going on. So that way we had all the hours correct, because I believe if you look at the variance, if you have it, I want to say that maybe we're off by like 5 or 10 hours. So looking at that, I just wanted to better clarify with this document the exact hours of what we had after looking at that logbook. So the logbook, there were no adjustments. The logbook was correct. I was just not able to go out on Friday due to the fact that I needed to make the variance to get it in by Friday.
Okay. So the logbook had 168.4 hours. That was the last entry, and then it jumped all the way up to, where's the 228.6 after the emergency? I mean, so the last, I'm just trying to find out, the last known logbook record before it exceeded 200 hours was 168.4.
Correct.
Okay, and then the next known one was 228.6.
Correct.
Okay. is there an opportunity to have a portable generator access this site and hook up to maybe that's for someone else? We can wait.
Yeah, we're going to
Okay.
defer that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I had a question. I'm wondering why, that's a lot of hours between the filing of this variance request and today. And obviously, we cannot retroactively grant a variance, but question is, are you, and it's not really relevant, but it is very important question. Are you aware of the ex parte emergency procedures? Because I think I heard in Mr. Tomasovic's opening that there might be a different generator that could be used. I don't know if I heard that. No, I did not hear that. But there are conditions that could be put.
So I tried to research what exactly an ex parte emergency was, and I can't find any. There was nothing in the rule, and there was nothing online that specified exactly what ex parte variance was. So it might just be ignorance on my part of not understanding what that is, but
I'm sure it's not. I'm sure it's not adequately explained in our materials, which is important for us to know and look at.
yeah, because I apologize. It has it has all four of them, but ex parte, and then there's nothing within the rule that explains what an ex parte is, but it has the other four clearly defined.
Thank you. And just so you know, that is available, and maybe we'll take that up after. Any other questions, though, on good cause? Okay, thank you. You had mentioned there were 3 outstanding questions, and I don't know if there's any additional evidence you'd like to give as well, but do you have someone who might be able to answer? I don't know if you recall the 3 questions. Okay. Ms. Vermoil, if you want to introduce someone else, if you can ask them to state their name, spell it, indicate their title, and that they took the oath today.
Okay. I'm going to defer this question to my superintendent, Jeff Laver.
Good morning.
Mr. Laver, can you just state your first and last name and spell it for the record?
Jeff Laver, Jefflaw, V as in Victor, ER.
And what is your title, Mr. Laver?
Fleet Superintendent for the County of San Bernardino.
And you took the oath I saw today, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Would you like us to repeat the questions, Ms. Finwell?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'll start with, I know there were 3, 2 were mine, and 1 was Mr. Balagopalan's. So let me just start with the questions I had, which is, number 1, if the county knew on as early as August 14th that you were pretty high on the hours in terms of 168.4, but we're waiting for the 180 hours. Was there somebody in charge of looking at the generator and watching to see when it might go over the 180 hours?
Yeah, back in February when it was at 148.8, I did let the park know that if this generator gets into an extended run period, they would need to let us know about it. They were keeping an eye on it. I can refer some of these questions also to Ryan here, who's the park superintendent or acting park superintendent. He might have some more as far as that goes. But yes, we did let them know back in February when we were at the 148 hours that they would need to be keeping an eye on it and let us know if we got into extended hours of running time.
Do you know then why it wasn't until the technician from Fleet had come to fuel the generator that no one knew that it had gone, from Fleet knew that it had gone over the 200? Do you know where that communication dropped?
Well, on 8/14, when the technician was out there, it was at 168.4, and they did let me know at that time it was at 168. But from our past experiences, we were told that we couldn't file the variance until we hit 180 hours. Then on the 8/27, when they lost power again, my conversations that I've had with Ryan is initially they thought it was going to be for a few hours, and they were going to be able to come in and do a repair and get it up and going. But like Ms. Finwall stated, when they did the repair, it was later in the evening and there was a problem. But Ryan could probably elaborate a little more on that if you would like.
We'll wait for that, but thank you for letting us know that there's someone who could elaborate on that. And then Ms. Finwall had mentioned, so the GPS for remote monitoring, that's already installed, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. That was installed on the 6th of this month.
Of this month, okay. Okay, so all the problems of communication coming up to this point, that is now moot.
That is correct.
Okay. And then I think I'll allow Mr. Balagopalan to restate his question, had to do with, I think, the hours for maintenance, but you can restate.
Thank you. Mr. Law, so I had two questions, actually. I noticed that the maintenance hours are only 1 hour showing in the log here. Is there somebody from fleet management that goes, so it doesn't appear that they go monthly to do a maintenance?
That is correct. Like stated earlier, this is a CSA generator. So CSA pretty much dictates to us for budgetary reasons of the regular times that we go out in maintenance. And this particular generator, we visit 3 times a year. So, and then the park, between the parks and CSA, they also look at the generators because I believe they go to the sites possibly monthly. Again, we have someone that can answer to those questions because they have to get readings, I believe, but they could further answer those questions.
Can you clarify what is CSA?
Special districts.
Special district, okay. So they dictate how often that somebody from fleet management can go out there to do the maintenance?
Yeah, fleet management maintains the generators and stuff for the county, but special districts and other departments have their own budgets, so they they do dictate as to when we actually go out and provide services for them.
So they don't see a need to do a monthly maintenance test run to make sure the engine is, operating properly and there's fuel. And I see the log of all the different checks that are done. So it looks like it's, very infrequent.
Correct. We advise, for them to go out and do checks on them and stuff. Again, it's related to their budget, so I can only answer to when fleet ourselves is there doing the maintenance on it.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had, do you happen to know what happened on January 23rd that caused the engine to run about 148 hours, 149 hours?
I believe there was a transformer issue. Again, Ryan can answer that more specifically.
Okay, and then on the 27th, somebody was out, on the 27th, that they lost the power due to the underground wiring. That was not due to the rat or the rodent chewing the wiring, right? Or is it due to that?
From my understanding, and Ryan can clarify that, I believe that the incident on the 27th possibly was caused by rodent also.
And do you happen to know then what was the subsequent power outage, which was quite substantial, 218 hours? What was that due to?
The rodent also, I believe they found other issues. There was initial repair done, but from my understanding from Ryan, it chewed another wire too, or when the power was turned back on, there was an arc of some sort that damaged the other wires at that time.
Okay, thank you. I had a follow-up question on the GPS unit. So the GPS unit is installed and it's transmitting data now?
Yeah, it's real time.
So who does it go to? Who monitors it?
Fleet management does. It goes to myself and Lauren.
And what exactly do you get from there? What kind of data do you get?
The time the utility fails and the exact time that the generator starts, when the utility returns, and then when the generator shuts off.
Okay, so that's operational and then you're getting, so somebody, your fleet manager then monitors that?
Yeah, 24 hours a day.
Okay, thank you.
May I redirect within the scope of those questions?
Yes, and then Mr. Copeland had questions.
Just really quickly, has CSA specified anything different for maintenance for the remainder of the calendar year? Or how many additional maintenance events are you expecting this calendar year?
No, and we have CSA personnel here that could answer those questions for you.
I didn't swear in, but I'll be the one that answers because I didn't think.
When we can have that question answered.
I would like it answered, yeah, thank you.
Okay, well, we'll do that after, I think we have another witness and then that third witness. And Mr. Copeland had questions.
Yeah, and I have a couple new questions. So on the, this is the permit's a few years old, and the equipment started out the year with only 180 hours on it. So, I mean, there's no history of this going over 200 hours. And so this exhibit number 2 has the end hour meter, I guess, at the beginning of 2019 is 180.2 hours. That's the total amount of hours that have ever been put on this generator, and it's been in place since?
2012.
Okay, so certainly seems like an anomaly. Okay, now back to my original question. Is there an opportunity to bring a portable generator into the site and hook it up to use on the lift station?
I was going to say, I don't know if that is related specifically to good cause, is it? Or should we
thought
hold that question?
I thought it might have been because.
If you think it is, then we can ask that question.
Yeah, I thought to avoid, you could have brought in a portable generator when it was at 160 hours or 100,
Okay.
and then used that or immediately hooked that up, so.
Then go ahead and ask that question, yes, you may answer.
Yeah, it's a 2012 generator. It's a Tier 3, so it's a pretty clean engine. So basically, we would have had to find a Tier 4 engine to basically go in there that would help that. Right now, the LA County Fair is going on. Fleet management ourselves, we do not own a 60 kW generator of that size that's Tier 4. And to acquire a Tier 4 60 kW was not even really a possibility. And we have kind of been told that's bringing a portable generator in is circumventing the rule also. So we're kind of careful about that also.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on good cause? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Lawver. We had indicated, I think there were a couple of questions with regard to Regional Park, and you have a representative. So if you can introduce yourself, your first and last name, and spell it, begin with that.
Good morning. My name is Ryan Isom, RYANISOM as in Mary. I'm Interim Park Operations Chief for Regional Parks.
Thank you, and I saw that you did take the oath this morning?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add, or would you like us to ask the specific questions?
You can ask us specific questions.
I know, I think the first question was one of mine, and it was with regard to, was anyone from Regional Park, well, first of all, was anyone keeping an eye on the generator hours to see if and when it would go to 180, to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, but are you aware that there was a request in February for Regional Park to do so?
No.
You're not aware, okay. And then, did anyone from Regional Park know when the generator actually, in fact, did go over the 200 hours? Or was that just something that was discovered when the technician came to refuel?
That was discovered when the technician came to refuel.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Balagopalan, did you have a question that needed?
Thank you, Mr. Isom. So it's the responsibility of the park then to check on the engine and when it's operating and adding to the log, or who does that? So, for instance, when in January 23rd, it ran for about 149 hours, who oversaw that operation and logged how many hours it ran and put it in the logbook?
Special Districts maintains and does everything for that generator. We have an MOU with Special Districts to operate all of our sewers and sewer lines, water lines, and that generator's running a sewer lift station, so that'd be Special Districts.
So the park doesn't have anything to do directly with the engine?
No, sir.
So what about notification to the special district that the engine was running for so many hours and so forth?
To my knowledge, they have a SCADA system on the unit itself to say when power goes off, but our witness from Special Districts can elaborate on that.
Okay, so then, do you happen to know what caused the other subsequent outages at the site?
Yes, we've had insane storms this year, and we were doing electrical upgrades throughout the park on all of our transformers. And that was phase 2, and we had an extreme storm that came through, and we're in a flood basin at Prado Regional Park. So the water rose, water got into one of the vaults, blew the main fuses at the park, and they come from a different country. So it took us 2.5 weeks to get fuses.
So when was that?
That was in January.
Oh, January,
That's
when that.
the high rate.
High rate,
Yeah.
okay. And then, what happened on August 27th, and also, and then it ran 218 hours subsequently. Is that due to the rodent chewing?
Yes, sir, that was due to the rodent.
Okay. So everything has been resolved right now? It's, the generator is not running right now, right? Power is...
Correct, the power's been restored.
So the subsequent use of this generator would be only for emergency if it occurred, or for maintenance and testing?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Isom? Thank you, Mr. Isom. Okay, and I think, Ms. Finwall, there was someone who indicated that they would like to speak for special districts. Is that correct? Okay,
Correct.
let's bring that witness up then, please. No, I think you need to sit, if someone could maybe vacate, sorry, we only have 3. Or you could go to the podium, whichever works for you. Just make sure, please, that you turn on the microphone there. Yes, and thank you, Mr. Balagopalan. Let me swear you in. Please raise your right hand. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay.
Is the
Okay,
mic on?
Yes, and can you please state and spell your name and tell us your title?
Lisa Green, Lisa Green. I am the Water and Sanitation Supervisor for Special Districts, Water and Sanitation.
Thank you, and I believe that Mr. Tomasovic had questions. Is that correct, Mr. Tomasovic?
Yes, thank you. For the generator, that's the subject of the variance petition today. What is planned for maintenance for the remainder of this calendar year?
The maintenance is done through fleet. Special Districts does not do any maintenance on generator. Everything that we do through Special Districts is through the fleet.
Ms. Green, can you just pull the microphone to you? Thank you.
Sorry. Do you mean repeat that, or?
No, I think it was probably picked up, but just for the remainder, if you could talk right into the microphone.
Okay, thank you. So Special Districts doesn't do any maintenance on there. The most that we do is read the generators, and it was just brought to my attention, I want to say last week, that the SCADA wasn't on that generator. What they have to do is due to the panel, and when the floods happen and everything, they have to run conduit and to try to get it to reach there. That has been worked on Friday and I believe Monday. As far as logging, I have instructed my crew to actually put in a log sheet. We go out and we log, and we are on an MOU with Parks. We have a log sheet now, and our guys go out due to budgets. They go out Monday, Wednesdays, and Friday, and they log. There is a generator sheet that has been placed at the stations where they will be logging the hours. The SCADA system tells us the same thing basically as the GPS. It tells us when that generator comes on, tells us when it goes off. It also lets me be aware that something's going on with the park. When that happens, we do reach out to Parks. We verify that they do have a power outage, what's going on. When my guys do go out, usually they go out if we find out it's a power outage. My guys do go out, it's just my crew. They go out and they verify it, they make sure everything is okay. Then Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I do have another person that would actually physically go out and log the numbers. But as far as maintenance on the generator, there is none by special districts.
We heard some testimony that the maintenance in terms of running the generator is slated for 3 times per year.
That would be a budget question, and I wouldn't have that. That would be through Fleet, how they set it up. And that would just be their regular maintenance, I guess, change the oil or fuel or whatever they're doing. Other than that, we don't.
So you don't have any knowledge on whether this might be run for maintenance 1 additional time, or 1 additional day this year, or 2 additional days this year?
No, everything will be through Fleet.
And could you identify the witness that would be able to answer that in this room?
That would be Jeff. And we were just made aware that of the hours. I didn't know anything about contacting Fleet until Lauren gave me that information. So all that would have went through Regional Parks. Regional Parks never conveyed that to us.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions for Ms. Green?
I do
Mr.
have.
Palakapala.
Ms. Green, so the SADA unit, is it SADA?
SCADA.
SCADA. So who would that, so that failed, or it wasn't operating?
That was not hooked in. So we just hooked that into our system.
So that would have reported directly to the special district, the usage of the engine?
Yes, we will get it because we have we have also the water there. So once the power goes out in the park, what happens is we get through a page through the water part of it, and it notifies us that there is a power outage. Once we're identified that there's a power outage, we call Regional Parks, and they let us know, yes, they do have a power outage going on. When that happens, then we do send somebody out, because we know the generator is running depending on where the park is telling us the outage is, because there's different sections that will go out. If it's that part, then we'll go out and we'll check and make sure that it's running, it's not running. In particular, on those days, we did know that it was running because the power went out throughout the whole park. And normally with the SCADA, what happens is the SCADA, we have, I'm gonna say 7 people on call, 24 hours a day. So our regular staff is through the hours of 8 to 4:30. And then from 4:30 to 8 a.m., we have on-call staff. And what happens to the SCADA, once that generator turns on, the SCADA alerts the person that's on call. It sends a signal to them, and then they're the ones that call the supervisor, which will be myself and Chris, Chris works with us, supervisor. We get that call. It lets us know that that SCADA is running.
So how long was the SCADA, it's never hooked up at this site, or was it hooked up and then it failed? How come your department didn't get notified?
We are not on SCADA. Right now, they put in the new panels, so we are in the process of right now having it hooked up. And I was off yesterday, so I can't tell you if it's completed, but it was started Friday, I think Thursday or Friday. We started installing the wires and having to dig the conduit, and because of all the wiring underneath the bottom and with the rodent issues, we have to kind of run it a different way, up and over the walls, and to get that hooked up.
So the GPS unit that was mentioned earlier, is that the same as the SCADA unit?
That would be Jeff's question.
Oh, okay. But if the SCADA, once it's operational, you will be notified?
Correct.
And then you send a crew out there. Who's responsible for fueling the tank or adding fuel?
Generator Services does our fueling.
Just the fuel. So your staff just goes and verifies that the generator is running, and now they're going to enter the log, or is their responsibility to log the hours?
Right now, there was nobody logging the hours, which after talking to Lauren, that was brought up. So as of now, I had instructed my crew to put a log sheet there, and they have been logging those hours since that was mentioned last week.
So if they notice that, let's say subsequently, let's say next year, hypothetically, it's running over close to 200 hours, will they notify you? What's the chain of command that goes and notify who does what to address the issue?
Usually that log sheet is turned in every month. So at the first of the month, we change out the log sheets. That tells us what's happening with the pumps at the station as well as what the generator's done. So once that report comes, we'll have a start number for the generator at the beginning of the month and the end of the month. Based on that, that would tell us how many hours, and then based on that is what we would technically report to Lauren, and then Lauren will get that information to you guys if need be.
Okay, so you wouldn't know it till the end of the month or early part of the following month?
That it ran?
Yeah,
No, I would know right then because it would come on the SCADA.
on the which is a system in the office somewhere, or?
No, I can actually access it through,
Access it.
yeah, 24 hours a day
Okay.
at home.
So that you will know how many hours it ran but you don't have does it have the totalizer? No.
No,
It
they
just-
only physically have to go out and you have to put eyes on it to actually get the actual number. The SCADA only tells you the generator is running and it's off.
Okay, so okay, thank you very much.
Did you want to, I'm sorry, I saw you signaling. Did you want to ask a question for clarification? No, you wanted to add something. Okay, let's do that. Let's, since we have introduced all of the witnesses, if you have something to add, indicate to me, and then if you can just state your name so that it's not confusing on the record. So, Ms. Finwell, you had something to add.
So I just wanted to clarify. So the SCADA and the GPS unit are two totally different things. To my knowledge, the SCADA just lets us know when it's gone offline and when it goes online. Now, we have no idea where the power is coming from when the SCADA goes. So if it says that power's back online, that could either be from the generator or from the power company. With the GPS unit that we have now on it, it will let us know exactly when it's going out and that that's the main power source that has gone out, and it is now the generator's responsibility to run that power. It'll tell us how long it runs. So let's say it runs out at 12:57 and 0.2 seconds, we will know at 12:57 and 0.2 seconds that power went off and that the generator went on all the way until the generator has powered off.
One question.
Yes.
Who's "we" and how does it get reported? You are actually monitoring the GPS or someone else is doing that?
So it's the GPS unit, it's called Iontra is who we use. So it's a satellite unit and it'll let us know. Jeff Laver gets alerted on his phone or an email or a text message of when that happens. So we're made aware of it as soon as it happens, and we can monitor the hours without actually having to physically see it. It'll let us know how long it runs, and it pings once an hour. So every hour on, whether it be at 1:30, so it'll go 1:30, 2:30, 3:30, and it'll ping us how long it's going, and it'll ping us even when it's off. So it lets us know even today it's off. Every hour on the hour, it's letting us know that there's been no runtime.
Okay, so just because there's a lot of districts and there's a lot of different departments involved in this, and it seems that there has been some breakdown of communication. So moving forward, just so we all, and I know this is not really related to good cause, but it sort of is, because we want to make sure before we make a decision on good cause that this is all wrapped up nice and neatly, that we understand. Moving forward, Mr. Laver in Fleet has a direct connection to this GPS system, and it will ping. Then Mr. Laver in Fleet Management has a direct line to Ms. Finwall, and that is how the need for, or the hours are being monitored consistently.
Correct.
Okay.
And then also, just kind of maybe also moving forward, because I think the biggest breakdown of miscommunication was understanding the permit conditions kind of moving forward, letting know all departments across all different lines to understand that if there is a generator that they're owning, while fleet management may permit it or do things, maybe making sure everyone's aware of those permit conditions so that the 200 hours are stressed, so that when we know that's going on or different things, or if there's other generators, other places, everyone is made aware of that 200-hour limit so that we're moving forward, going on, we're all made aware prior ahead of time so that we're not in this situation kind of in the last minute, and that this is kind of done, not when it hits 200 hours, but prior to that 200 hours.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions for, and then please indicate for who? Mr. Balagopala?
I had a question for Ms. Pinwell. So the GPS unit just tells you when it's running and how long it ran, correct? It doesn't give the cumulative hours the generator ran, has operated for the year. So do you take that information and then separately do a tally?
So, do you mind if I defer that question
Yeah,
to
no, that's fine.
Jeff
Yeah.
Lawver?
Yeah.
Jeff Lawver, Fleet Management. Yeah, it's actually a running total. So if if you go to the website, it goes to the specific generator. It actually lists total runtime of the generator, outage runtime and test runtime. So it's a running order. There's nothing on our end. You have to get out a calculator and do anything. It's right there in front of you. Right there in front of you on the screen.
So does it indicate then it has exceeded the 200 hours?
Actually, this system has a 180-hour allotment set on it that we set up with the GPS company and our ISD department. So January 1, it resets to 0. When the generator hits 180 hours, we actually, myself and Lauren, receive an email stating that the generator has reached the 180-hour allotment, and that gives us time to react. Again, it's on my cell phone. I carry it 24 hours a day, even at midnight or whatever. If I get that Saturday morning, I can get a hold of Lauren. She can make the phone call in to AQMD and leave a phone message that we're reaching that 200 hours, even if it's Saturday morning.
So this is moving forward. That's what you have. So what was in place prior to that to indicate that the SCADA unit didn't do that?
Like Lisa stated, the SCADA unit was installed on that unit. I wasn't aware that there was any damage to the SCADA, that they weren't being able to see it because of the rodent damage or whatever. But moving forward, we as fleet installed the GPS because we know historically that unit works very well, and we use that at our remote sites that we did the variances earlier in the year for.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for any of the witnesses on good cause?
Redirect, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Tomasovic.
The variance you're requesting relates to permit condition 4, correct?
Correct.
And since it's a new witness, any witness?
Oh, I
first, please.
apologize. Yes, Lauren Finwall, Fleet Management.
And just to ensure there's a common shared basis of understanding how this works, condition 4 says no more than 200 hours in any 1 year, and this is something that resets on January 1st of 2020.
Correct.
And when an engine goes above 200 hours, however legitimate or excusable the use of that engine may be, it's a problem of violating condition 4.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you for putting that on the record, Mr. Tomasovic. Any other questions before we move to closing on good cause? Ms. Finwall, did you have something to add, or would you like to put it in your closing?
I would like to just add one thing. It's going back to Mr. Copeland's question about the generator. It was to my knowledge that the reason why we did not put a portable generator, though it could have been tier 4, was that it could potentially be circumventing the rule, and that by using that as a stationary generator for the time being, because we didn't know how long it was going to be there, we could be potentially circumventing the rules as to not get that generator to 200 hours. So maybe with this knowledge of knowing that just maybe to curtail it, now we have that knowledge to move forward, whether it be this generator or future generators, that now we have that knowledge to potentially do that, since we could maybe have gone, if we did a tier 4, we could have maybe done that if any generators were available.
I don't think we're saying that we can do that. I think that's a question for the district, and I think circumvention is, I believe I've heard that before, and I think Mr. Balago-Pollen
Yeah, I
might-
would say that too. I think you need to check with the district on that before proceeding and bringing a portable to, so that you don't exceed the 200 hours, so.
I could see it as a condition of possibly, if it were something that were feasible as a condition of a variance, but I don't
Right.
think you can circumvent. But thank you for that. Okay, I think, any other questions? Any follow-up? Okay, thank you, Ms. Green. I think you can be seated for now. Ms. Finwall, do you have any closing statement you'd like to make on good cause?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Tomasovic, any closing you would like to make on good cause?
No closing, Madam Chair.
Board members, I think we can make the findings for good cause. I would begin if we wanted to. Hold on. Lost my, there we go. I think we've heard a lot of ways that the communication could have been improved, and perhaps there could have been a knowledge of going over the 200 hours sooner. But I do think that the findings we need to make for good cause do exist, and we have evidence of them all. First of all, as Mr. Tomasovic got in at the end, there is a violation. Obviously, we have heard that the violation is of permit condition number 4 with regard to the 200 hours that are allotted for this generator, and that was exceeded on the 29th of August. So certainly there is a violation. I think the circumstances could not reasonably have been avoided. As was described to us, the outage that caused this violation was done by rodents chewing, one or more rodents chewing wiring. As Mr. Copeland pointed out through questions, this was an aberration that before this year, it's a 2012 generator, before this year, there weren't even 200 hours on the generator. So I think this petitioner has been before us before and feels they did not want to come prematurely, and it was not foreseeable that this would have occurred. Perhaps if they were watching better, they could have known a little bit earlier, but it turns out that the last outage started on August 27th, didn't go over till the 200 till the 29th, and the filing occurred on the 30th. So even though there were these miscommunications and a lot of different departments and no GPS, I still think they were diligent in filing for sure, and couldn't have anticipated it any sooner, or not, maybe a day or two sooner. And while the ex parte might have helped, I do understand that is not clear, but hopefully they now know that is a possibility. And certainly that a denial of this variance, or at least a hearing on the merits, would have an unreasonable and unavoidable adverse impact, but in that to the public health, because let's not forget that this is a generator that backs up power to a sewage lift, and that if it's not operating, there could be a backup in a park leading to public health issues. So with that, I do believe we can make the findings for good cause. Anyone else have any thoughts? Mr. Balago-Pollen?
Yes, I think Ms. Finwall filed when they became aware of the fact that it exceeded the 188 hours, and actually by the time it was already over the 200 hours when they were notified. You know, it appears there's some miscommunication that's going on with all the different agencies and with the installation of the GPS unit and having it notify when it exceeds the 880 hours that this probably will be avoided in the future. And you said this is essential public service, and the generator needs to run to operate the sewer lift. So it's a critical for health and safety of the folks who use the park and so forth, that that they have the ability to run the generator in case there's a power failure. It appears everything has been fixed. So the rodent problems and all the wiring and everything has been taken care of. So moving forward, till the end of the year, probably the generator will only run for maintenance testing. However, I'm a little concerned when I look at the maintenance log sheet that this engine has not been maintained. As we see other engines, normally engines are run 1 hour a week or a month just to make sure everything's running and not wait till, something fails and then find out, there was no fuel or no oil or something. So that's a sort of a concern that, there's more frequent maintenance not be done, but it doesn't detract from the fact that we can find good costs, and move on for the interim variants.
Mr. Copeland.
Yeah, I agree with the good cause that Ms. Prusak outlined, and especially because it was filed very quickly. So thank you for filing that very quickly. And also, it was a very quick timeline from when it was below the hours to where it quickly ratcheted above the 200 hours, and there really was no history of this engine running that long. I got to hand it to the technician on the 29th who informed you guys that it went over the 200 hours, because that can be missed. So that's great that they found that, and maybe additional signs in there would help people, but obviously he did a great job noticing that, so thank you.
Any other thoughts? Dr. Bernstein?
Not to be redundant, but I also believe that good cause has been established, and again, we're talking about a public safety issue of key importance, and so in your review, Madam Chair, it seems to me that we've touched all the appropriate touchstones to establish good cause.
Thank you. And so I'll make a motion so we can proceed to a hearing on the merits. In the matter of the County of San Bernardino Regional Park, County of San Bernardino Special Districts, case number 6152-1, I move that we find good cause to proceed to a hearing on the merits in this matter in the absence of notice to the public for the reasons that we have now stated. Is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Bernstein seconds. Any discussion on that motion? How do you vote, Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Mr. Balagopalan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Bernstein votes, I vote yes. Motion passes 4-0. And so what we'll do now is, unless there's any objection, we will incorporate all of the evidence and testimony into the proceeding that we just had for the good cause phase. Any objection, Ms. Vinwell?
No.
Mr. Tomasovic?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay. Mr. Tomasovic, would you like to hand out the conditions now, or would you like to wait? I think we'll take a 15-minute break before we start on the merits.
I would like to hand them out and have them marked as the next exhibit or the first exhibit of respondent.
Actually, that's a pretty good idea, so that we can review it during our break. Oh, and if you can put the last one with, for the senator there. Okay, so we have received proposed interim variance conditions, and we will mark that as Exhibit A, as in apple, for the district. And then we will take just a little over 15 minutes for a break, and we'll be back on the record at 10:30. We are off the record. We're back on the record, and before the break, we incorporated into the record for the merits all of the evidence and testimony that we have already received. And so we just need to, I'll ask for an opening on the 6 findings if you wish to make it. And also, as far as evidence, we certainly would just need to incorporate additional evidence with regard to excess emissions and monitoring and the findings that we did not make. But the first 3 are covered for sure, or the first 2, I should say. So let me start with Ms. Finwall. Do you wish to make any opening on the 6 findings that we need to make for the variance?
I would like to request if we use the information from Good Cause over to this as my opening. Thank you.
Yes, we can do that. And Mr. Tomasovic, do you have an opening on the merits that you wish to make?
I do, thank you. First, looking at Exhibit A, this gives or sets out, as I indicated, what I would say are fairly generic conditions that have the support of our compliance staff here. Condition 1 speaks to limiting maintenance and testing time to no more than 1 hour per month for the period of this interim variance, and presumably if we have a future variance proceeding, that would also carry forward. Condition 2, in hearing some of the testimony on good cause, I gave some thought to whether any of these technical details about SCADA and GPS matter for purposes of minimum information needs for compliance staff. And I think Condition 2 remains fine as we wrote it, just in terms of setting a set time for the compliance staff that's most closely watching the situation to receive this information. And of course, nothing would prohibit Prado Regional Park from also reaching out separate from that if they should have any issues or questions in this period. Condition number 3 is also standard. Just a brief comment on Exhibit 3, which speaks to what the petitioner offered for excess emissions factors. So the emission factor table at the top is something we concur in and stipulate to it being accurate because, in fact, our own compliance staff was in communication with the petitioner to see that was used. There's just a bit of a misnomer or mislabeling at the bottom where it speaks to the excess emissions cost to date. Those are the excess emissions to date, I guess, in terms of hours above 200, what those emissions are. But in terms of looking at excess emissions costs or fees for purposes of variances, there's no retroactive coverage for the variance. So as a simple matter of defaults going forward, it's to the board's discretion what we have for excess emissions fees, of course, but it's as far as the minimum fee set by rule, that's just if the generator should only operate 2 or 3 additional days for the remainder of the year or for the period of the variance, it would just be the fee for that one day. And I think I believe petitioner understands that, and they'll make whatever request they like if they have an issue with it. And that concludes my opening statement.
Thank you. Was there a request as far as fees are concerned, or?
I was just going to request, I believe it's 303G, just a request for a reduction of emissions fees. So it's our fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayer to ask for either a fee waive or to at least ask for it to be reduced to what we would actually emit. So per the calculations, and I also wanted to update, I did not have the RHC, but that value is, if it were to run for 24 hours a day, how many pounds, it would cost us $2.67, which updates the total cost of excess emissions for one day to $31.73. So we either ask for a fee waive or to have it be reduced to the actual cost of emissions.
Okay, thank you. And we will take that up after the variance so that we can keep the two issues separate, but I wanted to know so that going forward, we know whether there is an actual request. Okay, Ms. Finwall, how do you wish to proceed in terms of presenting the rest of your evidence with regard to the 6 findings? Did you want to proceed, or did you want another witness to?
I don't mind proceeding.
Okay.
So we went over Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2. So Exhibit 3 is just a discussion of what would the daily rate be if we were to emit for a 24-hour period. So based off of the emissions factors of pounds per hour given to us through South Coast AQMD, I did the conversion factors of how much that would cost and just what the daily maximum for us would be. So it's only, like I stated in that, it's only 16% of the minimum of $199.09. Exhibit 4 is just showing that the contractor, Cisco, informed the regional parks, Ryan Isom, of the repairs that were made and need to be made in the future. And Exhibit 5 is clarifying when the power went offline. And that will do it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Tomasovic, do you have any questions?
Just one question, really. The engine is what tier, if you know?
Tier 3.
And in any hypothetical scenario where a Tier 4 engine could be used for the remainder of the calendar year instead of a Tier 3, can you estimate if there'd be any kind of incremental benefit in terms of emission reductions, or would that be pretty small?
To my knowledge, it would be pretty small.
I have no further questions.
Any questions, board members, for Ms. Finwall? Yes, Mr. Balagopalan.
I did have a question for Mr. Lauer.
Yes, sir.
So what is the plan moving forward for maintenance and testing? I think I've heard testimony that there's some limitation based on the special district and how many hours that can be done. Is there something that is going to be looked at? I mean, what can we anticipate for the rest of the year as far as maintenance and testing on the engine?
Yeah, I'll discuss with the supervisor. I will make a recommendation that maybe Fleet for the rest of the year goes out monthly and physically puts eyes on this for the remainder of the year. And I can get back with you on our next meeting of the outcome of that.
So when you say eyes, is it physically running the engine for an hour, or is it just checking just the fuel and so forth? What do you mean by? What I'm asking is there going to be a testing and maintenance? So typically that is, most places will run an engine just to make sure everything operates in the event of a failure. There shouldn't be any problem that the transfer takes place smoothly and so forth.
Fleet recommends that we run these engines monthly, just to the fact that we know that the engines will run and that everything is operational in case there is a true power outage, that they will come online. Like I stated earlier, that's kind of up to the CSA management for budgetary purposes, but I think for these circumstances, I think it will be reasonable to ask them for the remainder of the year for Fleet to actually go out and do that, or actually have one of their staff possibly do it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for any of the witnesses, I suppose, at this point? I don't think I have any. I don't see any. Mr. Copeland?
Yeah, thanks. So just to make sure, so the backup generator operates the sewer lift, and the sewer lift the lift station, is just managing the sewage from the park or whole surrounding community? Is it a big, huge area, or is it just one restroom? You could close that down and there wouldn't be any sewage, or can you just expand on that a little bit?
Ryan Isom, Regional Parks. It's running 75 full hookup campsites, multi-purpose room, and 8 restrooms.
Great, thank you.
Just so we're clear, I believe Mr. Tomasovic said this in his opening, but Exhibit 3, the top, I'm not concerned with, but it's relevant for our findings that excess emissions, you're in agreement that what's stated at the top, the emission factor of pounds per hour for each pollutant, those are excess emissions whenever the generator is now run,
Correct.
including for maintenance and testing.
Correct.
Okay. And you are also aware of the proposed conditions and can maintain compliance with those conditions.
Correct.
And I would propose, I would do it at the time of a motion, but I'll ask you now. I would propose, since this would be an interim variance, which would end when this matter could be heard, which is currently, for a regular variance, which is currently scheduled for October 22nd, that the third condition, which is with regard to any excess emissions fees, which will take up the amount of that after, but that date be changed from the 25th to the 22nd. And would that be?
That works for the county.
Okay. Any other questions before we close the record? Okay, I see no other questions. So thank you for that additional testimony. Do you have any closing statement on the 6 findings?
I have no closing statement.
Thank you. Mr. Tomasovic, do you have any closing? Oh, I should have asked you before I closed it. Did you have any witnesses you wish to present?
None appear to be needed, Madam Chair.
And I'll make sure anyone wish to hear from any district witnesses. No, thank you. Okay, Mr. Tomasovic, now you're closing.
Subject to the board's adoption of variance conditions similar to or consistent to those in Exhibit A, the district does not oppose the granting of the interim variance.
Thank you. Board members, I'll begin discussion on the 6 findings as well, and I do believe, just as we were able to make the findings for good cause, that we can make the findings for the interim variance as well. And the first 2 were already handled in discussion for the good cause. We know that the violation currently is that the generator is over 400 hours for the year, and the limit in condition 4 of the permit is 200 hours for the year, and we were able to find that it could not be avoided, which is a higher standard actually than the beyond reasonable control, and it's for the same reasons that I believe that the going over 200 hours and needing a variance was beyond the reasonable control of the petitioner. I also can make the finding that requiring compliance would result in an arbitrary, unreasonable taking of property or the practical closing and elimination of a lawful business. In particular, I would say that it's more of a public health issue, and the taking of this generator, if they could not operate it because they're over the 200 hours, in the case of a loss of power, would result in a public health issue because it operates that sewage lift. We wouldn't want to see that occur. And I do believe that the next finding, that closing or taking, the taking of that generator and what could result in the case of a power outage would be without a corresponding benefit in reducing air contaminants. In this case, that would be weighing the possibility of not having that generator in a power outage, and that large potential of a sewage spill versus, trying to find it, the excess emissions per hour, which would only occur in that situation where that emergency generator is needed, in addition to maintenance, which is also very crucial. And those emission factors are for CO 0.27, NOx 0.61, VOCs 0.03, PM10 0.03, and SOx 0.001 pounds per hour. So I can make that third finding. Curtailment is not an option in lieu of attaining a variance. The 200 hours have already been exceeded, and they need to use the generator in an emergency. Reducing excess emissions to the maximum extent feasible. It's not feasible to bring in a Tier 4 engine, and we've heard that. And the Tier 3 engine is pretty new, and as we've just looked at, the emission factors are relatively small in terms of the emissions. And during the period that the variances, and also they'll be limiting, as they would under their permit, to no more maintenance than 1 hour a month, which is actually more than they do, but still is reasonable, and also just to emergency use. Monitoring will take, we now know, they will be monitoring the hours, and the calculation of excess emissions is a simple calculation once the hours are known, and they have a GPS that will be monitoring. But in addition, condition number 2 of the proposed conditions is for monitoring. So I believe all 6 findings can be made. Anyone else wish to add to that? Mr. Copeland?
Yeah, just to state my agreement that I think the 6 findings can also be made, and a lot of them are supported. Well, obviously from the good cause discussion we had earlier, the speedy variance application, and that you discovered this, the overage rather quickly and then reported to the district. And then the public health issue, it's a sewage lift station. I think if we had to put a stop to using this thing, it would clearly create a problem for at least the park goers and maybe the surrounding community.
Thank you. Mr. Balagopalan?
No, I agree too that the 6 findings can be made. And in addition, I think moving forward, that the fact that they have the GPS unit, and they, at least for the next year, they'll know when they reach 180 hours and can take appropriate action, file a timely variance request if it exceeds 180 hours. So they'll be notified, and hopefully between the now and the next variance, will hear that they've worked out the issues with the special district, and they've come to some kind of agreement on maintenance and budgeting and so forth, so they can do some regular maintenance on that engine.
Anything else? And I do think it is, it's good to see that there's so much work being done on the fact before you even came before us on making sure that all the issues are ironed out, and that this does not occur again. And again, just to bring up the fact that it's never occurred before, it has been an aberration, and yet those issues are ironed out so that it should not happen again. Well, it could happen again, but you'll be well aware of it in time to come for any variance relief that might be necessary. So with that, unless there's anything else, I will make a motion, and that is the matter of the County of San Bernardino Regional Park, County of San Bernardino Special Districts, case number 6152-1. I move that we grant the interim variance, which would begin today and would go for 90 days or until this matter can be heard for a regular variance, currently scheduled for October 22nd, 2019. It would be for the generator, the emergency generator on page 2 of the petition, application permit number G23943, and it will be from Rule 203B with regard to permit condition number 4 and the 200 emergency hour limit. I further move that we incorporate the proposed interim variance conditions in Exhibit A as an apple with the one sole change of the date in condition number 3 to October 22nd from October 25th, 2019. Excess emissions are anticipated as is in Exhibit number 3 in the chart on the top, and I'll just read them for ease of the clerk's office. CO 0.27, NOx 0.61, VOCs 0.03, PM10 0.03, SOx 0.001, and those are all in pounds per hour and only when the generator is run under the conditions of the variance. And that completes my motion. Is there a second? Mr. Balagopalan seconds. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Mr. Copeland, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Bernstein, how do you vote? Aye. Mr. Balagopalan, how do you vote?
Yes.
I vote yes. Motion passes 4-0, so the interim is granted. We will now take up the request for an adjustment of fees. And that request was made under Rule 303G, which allows the hearing board may adjust the excess emission fee required by subdivisions D, E, and F, which simply lay out the excess emission fees, and the minimum excess emission fees that are required under the subdivision. At the request of the petitioner or upon motion of the hearing board based on evidence regarding emissions presented at the time of hearing. We also have discretionary powers under 303M with regard to an unreasonable hardship or otherwise inequitable. And I'm going to ask Ms. Finwall, I know you presented us with exhibit number 3, which mentions, I think it mentions the minimum. If you can, I don't know if it's been updated, but the minimum excess emission fees versus what you believe or have calculated to be the excess emissions fees. And if you wanted to, I know you also mentioned the public and that you are a public entity and it's taxpayer money. So if there's anything else you'd like to say, this would be the opportunity.
Yes, just to express, I know that updated from earlier this year, the current minimum is $199.09. Once doing the calculation, we're coming out, if it were to run for 24 hours the entire day, that cost would be $31.73, which is a little bit under 16% of the minimum excess fee. So just with the responsibility of that taxpayer money, we're requesting to either have those fees waived or just to pay whatever excess we're actually making instead of the minimum fee. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Tomasovic, did you have any position or anything you wish to add?
I don't have a position on it except to note that under 303O, there is a provision in the rule that says federal, state, or local government agencies or public districts shall pay all fees. This is, of course, controlled by the other provisions that Madam Chair had cited, which says the board does, in the end, have some discretionary powers to adjust those.
Thank you. And did you have any hardship or any other argument you wish to make before I close the record on this? And it's so that just so I understand that the argument is inequitable based on the amount of minimum versus actual fees.
I know that this hardship wouldn't be for fleet management, but it could potentially be a hardship based upon the budget for our regional parks and for our special districts.
And is that the case based, again, these, oh, well, I should ask Mr. Tomasovic, are you aware of whether fees only, the minimum daily excess emission fees are only on days when the generator run, is that correct?
That is correct. And so as concerns what might be the projected fees for the period of the interim variance, assuming they have 1 day of maintenance or 2 days of maintenance, you're talking about roughly $200 or $400.
Anything else, Ms. Finwall, you wish to add?
Just to add that if we were to maintenance it, I mean, we're looking at probably like $1 or $2 versus $400, because this is based off of a 24-hour runtime. So we're looking at, I mean, it's a pretty big jump. It's almost what is that, a 200% jump plus a little bit, if it's even for a day.
Thank you. Okay, board members, I have thoughts, Mr. Copeland,
Yeah, I guess I have a question, really.
please.
So it's just being proposed to eliminate the minimum. That's simply what's being proposed. So normally there's a $200 minimum if you operate it for 1 day, but you think it's going to be only $30 in real emissions. So you're asking to just be that the taxpayers should only be charged the $30, roughly $30, rather than it going up to the minimum.
Correct.
The request is not based on actual dollar amounts. So the request, as I understand it, and as we have power, would be for the hearing board to make a motion to base excess emission fees on actual emissions versus instead of the minimum daily. So in reality, that is what would occur on a day when they run it 24 hours. However, we're not, those calculations are not done by us.
They would, if they ran it 24 hours, well, they would never, I mean, they're not waiving a maximum. They're just waiving the minimum. Okay, well, I think I understand.
Right, did you understand, or? Okay. Before I close it, do you have questions, Mr. Valagopalan? Anyone have questions, and then I'll allow Ms. Finwall to give a final statement on that. Okay, Ms. Finwall, and then we'll open deliberation.
Okay, per the discretion of the board, we're asking to either have the fee waived if you found that to be something that could happen, or waive the minimum and just pay what the actual emissions would be, which would be far below the minimum, if that further clarifies. Whatever, per the discretion of the board.
Thank you. Mr. Balagopalan, you had something?
No, I was going to say, just to clarify, so that even though the estimate is based on 24 hours, if it's just running for an hour a month for maintenance, so it'll be a substantial, much lower fee than the $30, really.
Correct.
Yeah, roughly about a.
Are you asking a question, or are we having deliberation?
Maybe I'm doing.
No, we'll tell me.
I'm asking the question, so because you based this calculation on a 24-hour day operation, so if the engine only had to run for maintenance and operation, so that the total figure you cited of $31 divided by 24 will give the amount for the day, for the day that it's been run, if it was just run for maintenance testing purpose, am I correct?
Correct. So I'd say roughly it's approximately $1.50, just looking, maybe a little bit lower than $1.50, looking at this if it were to run for 1 hour.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions? And otherwise, we can turn to deliberation. Okay, thank you. I think, board members, first we need to frame the fact that we are on an interim variance. So the question or the discussion, the deliberation, I think is a little bit different for this smaller amount of time than if it were going through the end of the year. And I usually, we've not been asked under 303G, which really doesn't give us any standard by which to adjust or review. Usually we look at 303M, which is our discretionary powers, and I think that's a helpful guide because usually we look at whether there is an unreasonable hardship, which, given the amount of, or the numbers here, I think they would be hard pressed. Plus, we did not hear any other evidence of a hardship. And so the only question we have is whether it's otherwise inequitable to just leave fees as they are already without adjustments.
I
Mr.
guess I have
Copeland.
a question for you. Are these fees considered like administrative? The district feels that they need these fees to administer this, or are they supposed to be kind of like, yeah, punitive? I don't want to use that word really, but I mean, which are they?
I think they are used administratively. Meaning they're used, the hearing board functions on the fees that are paid, I believe. Yes, I'm getting the nod from the clerk. They're not punitive in nature. My understanding of them is that they are based on the fact that there are excess emissions and they're being offset through the fees, which then support the hearing board processes.
Okay.
But with that, go ahead, Mr. Valakopolen.
I think we heard some testimony, I'm not sure exactly what's going on within the different departments, that there is some hardship and some budgeting issue that has led them to not do regular maintenance on the engine. So I think using that statement earlier, I can maybe see that maybe there's some, while they work out the budget issues, that I'm open to just pay the fees based on actual operating hours of the engine instead of paying the minimum fee.
I don't see evidence to support hardship, but I did see another argument that you were making. Hardship, I didn't hear that $200 in 1 month would be a hardship. However, I would be open to discussing the fact. I personally would be open to discussing the fact that maybe it's a disincentive, further disincentive, that there would be a $200 emissions fee in order to perform maintenance, to actually have that maintenance performed, since they're not even doing regular maintenance. Is that your thought?
Sorry, I think you clearly stated it, yeah.
Yeah,
Mr. Copeland, yes.
yeah, I agree with that point. That's helpful. I don't think we should, maybe we can't even waive all the fees, but waiving the minimum, it does seem kind of funny to have these different agencies just transferring money from one agency to another. It's all taxpayer money. But I also wouldn't want to get in the situation where every time another agency comes in here, we have to waive fees for them. So maybe the point about avoiding maintenance, because it's going to cost you $200 every time you run the generator, or the minimum, is appropriate.
And I think we should clearly, on the record, take off the table the fact that we're dealing with a government agency. And I think the reason is, as Mr. Tomasovic pointed out, that was considered in Rule 303, and under government agencies, it states federal, state, or local government agencies or public districts shall pay all fees. Now, that doesn't take our discretion away if we find it otherwise inequitable or there's some rationale why we might want to adjust it. But the mere fact that we have a public or a government agency in front of us rather than a private entity, I don't think we want to set that precedent. And I don't think we can, actually. I think it's. I think for that one reason, I'm weighing towards it, because the 3113, is that what I wrote? But the $31 essentially per day versus $200, I think that's the same for any entity that comes before us that has a generator issue or something that is less than the minimum, but the minimum was established for a reason. And so I don't think that based on, in and of itself, makes it otherwise inequitable or a hardship that I would normally say we should adjust the fees to actual. But given the issue of maintenance. I don't know. It is a disincentive, but it's $200. I don't know that in the budget, that's too much of a hardship or too much of a, but I don't know. I don't know if anyone else has thoughts on that or wishes to make a motion with regard to fees.
I can make a motion.
And while we think about it.
And then if we vote no, then it's, pay the minimum,
Okay.
So do I have to go through for the case number 6152-1, as regard to the excess submission fee, I make the motion that they pay the excess submission fee based on actual hours of operation during the duration of the interim variance, and not the minimum fee.
Okay, so we have a second. So I'll put it to vote then. Mr. Copeland, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay. I'm having a hard time. I'm going to vote no, but because I'm feeling it's a very small amount of money. But I'm going to go to Dr. Bernstein, who will vote. Yes. And Mr. Balagopalan votes.
Yes.
And the motion passes 3-1. I think that's it. Good luck, and we will see you in October, hopefully for a shorter hearing. Any other business board members before we adjourn? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Copeland, for standing in and doing such a great job, and we are adjourned.